What's poppin', people? It's Dante. This morning we're going to be discussing soul street photography and how we can achieve this goal of photographing our soul. I find this to be a very empowering way to approach photography. It becomes a very personal, subjective approach where we're not necessarily going out there trying to photograph the world as it is, but what it could be through our personal interpretation of reality. And so, what is the soul? We're going to ask these questions today. How do we photograph the soul, and why does this matter? And how can we achieve this goal of photographing our soul? And so, as a street photographer, of course, I'm embarking on this journey by walking through the world, photographing strangers, making candid pictures. But I believe that the photographs that we make become a reflection of how we interpret reality. They become a reflection of our internal state of being. You know, as much as we're photographing the external world around us, I believe that through cultivating our inner sense of self, by knowing ourselves, we can then photograph ourselves through the external world around us. And so what is the soul? And so we're going to dive into Plato's three-tier soul today, describing Plato's idea of what it means to essentially strive to the divine. You know, in Plato's world, he describes God as the good, and there are these eternal forms of the good, being beauty, love, justice, and the goal is to strive to cultivate your soul by having this sort of purified soul in the material realm through reason, through spirit, and through appetite, and the balance between the three to then achieve this divine-like state to become like God. And so essentially, we have three different parts of our physical body. You can think of your mind, reason, you know, the mind that seeks truth and wisdom, the logos, the spirit, the heart, right? Your thumos, your courage, your spiritedness, that courage and honor that drives you to move. And then finally, the third tier, the bottom part of your soul, where we have the gut, we have the appetite, we have the body's desire for pleasure and survival, that primal instinct within us. And so with these three tiers of the soul, the goal is to have balance and harmony between them to strive to be like God. And so Plato's world, he believes that essentially we should balance these three things. And so while I find that the rational mind is important in our lives, and of course our desires are something that we should notice and act upon, I think when you're on the streets and you're practicing street photography, we should embrace Thumos. So my idea is essentially Thumos maxing, and so maximizing that spiritedness when we're on the streets, disregarding reason, disregarding our desires, and going full force with courage, with spiritedness, with Thumos. And so my idea with photography is photography requires courage, it requires heart, it requires you to be out there in embodied reality on the front lines of life. And Thumos, this sort of inner spiritedness, this fire within us, is what drives us to move and to make photographs. And I find this to be a much more exciting way to approach street photography. And so by maximizing Thumos, it reminds me that I will and must die. And so you are a demigod. Think about it. With Plato's philosophy and with a lot of the ancient traditions and different spiritual schools, the goal was to always strive to become like God, to strive to become divine, to remember that you have the divine within you. And so the goal essentially with this sort of philosophical approach to street photography, and essentially soul photography is to not fear death, because you are immortal. And if you consider your body as this mortal flesh thing that is a bag of bones with blood and muscles and yada yada that's going to cut and bleed and die, but you strive for the divine, well, why fear death? And when you no longer fear death, you find yourself in this very abundant state where you have energy, you have power, you have thumos, and you have no fear because you no longer fear death, but you accept it as a very critical part of life. And honestly, with my personal philosophy, I think this world is a school. I think we're here to learn. I think we're here to explore. And if we are here as artists and photographers, and this is our passion to make images, well, remember that you can't live forever, right? But at least you can make a photograph. And so I find that photography is a way to immortalize our soul. And so release your daemon when you're on the street. That spirit within you that guides you, your daemon. I feel like when I'm on the streets, I have Jesus Christ on my left shoulder and Saint Michael the Archangel on my right. And when I go out there, I have no fear. I have nothing but courage and Thumos at the forefront when I'm making my photos. And I think this is an exciting approach to use the streets as a place for you to conquer physically, as a way for you to wield your camera like a sword, cutting through the heart of chaos, putting order to the frames. And so I think that the essential approach in my personal philosophy with street photography and essentially soul photography is for me to go full force with spiritedness, to go full force with courage, and to allow that to be what's expressed in the images I make. And so don't wait for inspiration, right? Inspiration is a fool's game, to sit around and wait for you to be inspired to work on a project or look at some piece of art that makes you move to go and take pictures. Recognize that motivation, it derives from your legs. It derives from your body. Motivation, meaning movere, to move, it essentially means that you should just go out there and move your body to become motivated. That's what motivation is. Motivation derives through your movement, through going out there in the world and doing the thing itself. And so with photography, it's a very physical act. It's a very physical medium, and it requires us to be an embodied reality, to move, to photograph, to see, to wonder. And I think that this is really important. And so photograph from your pure instincts, right? Don't think, just shoot. This is how we can achieve this goal of photographing our soul. When you disregard the rational mind that's looking at leading lines and compositional techniques that you have up your sleeve, when you're looking at life and all of its complexities and trying to put order in the chaos with your frames, don't try to analyze too much with your rational mind. Don't try to analyze too much with the sort of mind, right? Don't think at all, right? The goal is to shut off the thoughts and just shoot through our thumos, through our spirit. That's the goal for me going forward. In order for me to maximize this idea of photographing the soul, I'm no longer thinking, I'm no longer looking at life and thinking in my head, is this a good, bad photo? Is this going to be an impactful composition? I'm simply responding quickly, intuitively, on my toes, clicking the shutter. And so this to me is what it means to photograph the soul through the thumos. This is how I'm approaching soul photography. And so the body and the soul is an interesting concept. Here we have a painting by Caravaggio of Saint Jerome, and you can see he's hunched over. His body is decrepit. He's studying the Bible, and he's got this skull sitting atop his book, and he's waiting for the afterlife. He's neglecting his physical body. He's hunched over in a dark room, and a lot of the Catholic tradition and a lot of Christian mysticism derives around this idea that we must separate ourselves from our physical bodies to then connect with the divine. Essentially going all the way back to Plato with his idea of striving for the divine and moving away from the material world. But I find that by championing this physical world, by being a demigod, by being half mortal, half immortal, by moving through the world like you're an ancient Greek hero, let's say the archetype of Achilles, you champion this world, you champion this body that you're within, and that's going to reflect the soul that you embody, right? Where you can see St. Jerome's soul, it's decrepit, it's weak, and I find that if you look at a soul, or if you look at a physical body, you're almost looking at their soul, and I think that if you're physically healthy, if you're strong, if you're muscular, if you have vitality and energy and thumos and spirit that drives you out there into the world, your body is strong, your mind is strong, and your soul, of course, will be strong. And so I think that we should prioritize the body over the soul, and through prioritizing the body, we'll cultivate vitality, and through that vitality comes curiosity, and through curiosity, we have the ability to go out there and to make art, to make photographs. And so treat photography as a way for you to champion your physical body and have the photographs you make derive through that state of pure physiological power and vitality. That's my idea with the body and the soul. I don't think that we should neglect our physical bodies and only focus on the soul, but I think that if you champion your physical body and you cultivate a strong core, a strong foundation, your soul will reflect that. And so when you're on the streets, I find that by photographing loosely, by embracing imperfection, and simply treating photography as like walking meditation, and you're just responding to your gut at the moments that you see as you're walking physically through the world, you can achieve this goal of photographing the soul. And so how do you photograph the soul? So photographing the soul, I think it derives through that physical state of being. It derives through the physical state that you're within. So when you have vitality, when you're physically strong, when your body and your foundation and the core of your soul is intact and is strong, your physical body will then influence your emotional state of being. And so through vitality, I cultivate joy. And so my goal is to photograph that joy, is to photograph that feeling that I have within me, is to essentially evoke the feeling of Thumos. So pressing the shutter is saying yes to life. And so for me, when I'm making pictures, I'm treating it as life affirmation. I'm simply saying yes to life with the click of the shutter. And so the goal for me is to affirm life through photography. And I find this to be a very beautiful approach to soul photography. And so now we're going to discuss the metaphysics of photography, where I find that the word photography is interesting, right? Phos meaning light, graphe meaning writing or drawing. Essentially, photography is light on surface, drawing with light. And I find that through approaching street photography, essentially we're not looking for the truth. We're not photographing the truth, right? It's, like a photograph isn't, truth. It's not a lie. It's just an interpretation of reality. It's what the camera saw at that moment in time. And the only thing that a photographer is responsible for is where they position their physical body in relationship to the subject, the background, and when they press the shutter. And the camera is ultimately what's interpreting reality. You're the physical vessel operating this device. And so with black and white abstraction, I'm finding that I'm seeing beyond the veil with the photographs that I make. And so by photographing in high contrast black and white, I believe it's allowing me to express myself more, to reveal my soul in the frames by crushing the shadows and what's unimportant, but revealing what's important to me within the light. And so now we're going to dive in to some basic ideas about metaphysics and photography and why I think this is interesting. So Aristotle has these ideas of the four causes, and essentially the material cause is the stuff it's made of. So we have the camera, we have the sensor, we have the light, the physical tools or the medium itself. And then we have the formal cause, right? The formal cause is the structure or shape, the composition, the framing, the order or form of the photograph that you impose on the chaos of the streets. We have the efficient cause being the force that brings it into being, which is you, the photographer, the vessel, the person who is operating the camera, acting with intuition at the moment they press the shutter. And then finally, the telos, the goal. And I think this is the most important aspect of Aristotle's four causes of metaphysics here. We have the idea of the goal itself, the telos of photography. And I find that the ultimate way to approach photography is the autotelic approach, meaning self goal, right? The goal is within itself. And so the purpose or the why and the reason why you make the photograph is to affirm life, is the fact that you love photography. And so you're making photographs for the sake of making photographs. And so when you look at this photograph that I made, I'm making this photograph in a way that is very much derived through the intuition. I'm making a photograph at that fraction of a second where I recognize a moment between a mother and a child as she is holding on to her shirt and running with joy and a smile. And that beautiful moment, that joyous split second of a moment that I witnessed on the streets is what had me respond with my camera to click the shutter and then ultimately create this outcome, this result of the photograph through my life-affirming process of simply saying yes to life, through responding to my gut, to responding to my instinct. And I find that these ideas aren't necessary. I think it's important, though, to have a foundation and an understanding of metaphysics, just to understand the way in which we can frame why these things matter and how they operate philosophically. But the goal is to make photographs for the sake of making photographs and treating it as life affirmation. And so I think that with soul photography, it's going to express your most authentic expression as an artist. And the goal, by shutting off the rational mind and responding through your spiritedness, is to evoke that pure essence of who you are in the frames that you make. And so the most beautiful thought I have with photography, and especially black and white photography, is the fact that you can create a new world in a fraction of a second through abstracting reality, through transforming the ordinary and elevating it to an extraordinary ordinary height. And so the world around us becomes a canvas. The world around us becomes something for us to subjectively interpret with our lens. And I don't think we necessarily have to photograph life as it is, but what it could be once again. And so photographing your soul is actually harder than photographing the world because it's going to require self-awareness, a flow state, and a detachment from the outcome, from the results that you're photographing. And so by photographing your own world and creating your own world, it gives you your own game to play where there are no rules, there are no guidelines. The only rule is to return to the childlike spirit, and that childlike state of being is going to fuel you with this sense of curiosity. And so if you think of a child, they have endless potential and endless growth to transform and to grow. And so we want to return to that state every single day and to photograph through the spirit of play, through our spiritedness. This is what we want to achieve on the street in terms of practicing soul photography. And so follow the light, where light is Thumos, right? When you think of courage and vitality and spiritedness, sunlight is the ultimate charger, and our bodies are the battery. And when you charge your soul with the sun, you fuel yourself with physical vitality. I mean, literally the sun is providing you with vitamin D, the UV radiation influences your testosterone, and you're becoming stronger through embracing the sunlight. And so I simply say, follow the light, for this is energy, and it will fuel you with courage. I find that the light is the ultimate medium. It's the ultimate subject that I'm interested in terms of photography, returning to its essence, being light on surface. And so allow light to guide you. Follow the light and simply photograph the light and find the way in which light changes upon seasons and the way it casts upon surfaces and the way that it's never going to be the same and where you cannot make the same photograph twice. For the way the light is changing all throughout the day will never be the same, and you can never repeat the same photo twice. And so the photograph that we make is merely a reflection of how the photographer engages with life. And so remember that. Photography has nothing to do with photography. Photography has everything to do with how you engage with humanity out there in the open world on the front lines of life. And that's what reflects back in the photographs you make. And so treat the street as an arena. The world has been conquered. There is nowhere for man to explore and conquer, but we have a street, we have a camera, and we have 2 feet. And so I say, go out there and conquer photography. Wield the camera as the sword. Strike through the heart of chaos. Reflect the soul in the streets. And put order to the chaos in your frames. Light is your guide. And photograph through your courage. Photograph through your thumos, through your spiritedness. And hopefully by hearing some of these ideas and looking at some of these images and discussing this deeply, you can have a better understanding of how you can achieve this goal of photographing the soul. This is my personal interpretation of how to achieve it. You can have your own way of achieving this. We all are different. We all have our own perceptions of reality. But I believe that in order to photograph the soul, it's essentially coming from a very pure instinctual state of being, disregarding the rational mind and going full force with Thumos. And so if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to check out DanteSisofo.com, where I have 3 free ebooks for you. We have the Ultimate Rico GR Street Photography Guide, the Contact Sheets ebook, and finally the Mastering Layering and Street Photography Guide. There's a variety of blog posts and information that you can find on my website if you want to learn more about street photography. And so with that being said, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.